Hi, I'm Angus Clark. I am preparing for a gig. Starting last year, I started playing guitar for the Ultimate Queen Celebration featuring Marc Martel, a singer who does an amazing job of recreating the performances of Freddie Mercury. It's an honor to be doing it. This gig looked good to me when I got offered it. I decided to go all in. It's kind of a tribute act. They're not looking for me to wear a Brian May wig or anything like that, but I do like to pay homage to these greats of music. Number one thing for getting that Brian May sound is you have to get the guitar. So this then would be the Brian May guitars, red special. I was actually hoping to get it in a color like other than red, just to be that 1 point different than Brian, but this is fine. I think it goes for like $8.99 new, and I got this for about $700 because it had been bought and returned by somebody. Second thing to do about getting the sound, is it worth playing with a sixpence? I don't know, but I just figured I'd give it a whirl. So here I am. I ordered these from a coin collector in England. They're about $1 a piece. I found them on Etsy. Okay, so I got the guitar and I got the coin. Now, this particular gig, I'm told we're doing this all on in-ears. That's great. I have ear molds. I'm used to playing on in-ears. We do it all the time for Trans-Siberian Orchestra. I've done it since I was in Kitaro. That's great. We're not using real amps. We're using modelers. And Tristan Avakian, original guitar player for the Queen Extravaganza, he's using an Axe 8. Now, I have a lot of experience with the fractal units. Use them all the time on the TSO. Don't actually own one. But I had already purchased earlier in, I think, 2016, an AmpliFIRE 12 by Atomic Amps. And if you're not familiar with Atomic Amps, great company. They make great stuff. And the thing that I really like about the AmpliFIRE 12, which you can see here, is that it is small enough to fit in a carry-on suitcase. And it doesn't have any, volume pedals or anything with it. I don't always use a volume pedal, so I don't need that to be on the board at all times. If I wanted to add one, I can do that. Tom hooked me up with the guys at Celestion, and I got all the Celestion Impulse Responses. So what we're doing today is we're looking at how I program my patches into the AmpliFIRE 12 in order to emulate Brian May's sounds and to fit in with this gig. The AmpliFIRE 12, this is their editor, which I think it's a great editor. I mean, I've obviously used the Fractal one for a long time. This is similar, but a little easier in some ways, a little more challenging in others. Let's look at just this basic crunch patch that I've dialed up. You can see it's got this string of blocks, and I'll explain each one kind of in order, starting, well, not in order. I'm going to explain each one starting with the amp. So their AC30 is called a top boost. Interesting thing about that is that, Brian May doesn't use the Brilliant channel or the top boost channel. He uses the normal channel on the amp. The main other thing that he uses is a treble booster. Now, the AmpliFIRE 12 does not actually have a treble booster model. They have, and we'll look here in what their stomp box is, they have a tube screamer, they have an overdrive, they have a distortion, they have a fuzz, and a clean boost. So I opted to go for the clean boost, which does actually have drive and tone associated with it, just does significantly less gain and significantly less coloration than either the screamer or the overdrive. I have a treble booster, but it's a BSM clone of like the Blackmore thing, so it's not exactly right. But a friend of mine lent me this pedal, which I think is homemade by somebody, and it just has the one knob on it, and you turn it on. And I used it on a gig, just where I was playing through an amp with the Brian May guitar, and it sounded dead on the money. So what I did was, in order to figure out what the actual level boost and coloration of this is, I just put up the AC30 model, and then I set it to a really tame kind of low gain setting. And then I plug this in with just the knob at noon. It has this full sweep, so I just put the knob at noon. And the amount of level boost you get out of a treble booster is insane. It's kind of scary. Like you think, am I going to blow something up putting this into the front end of an amp? So that is something that I really had to wrap my head around in order to program this, because the amount of dB gain that I was going to put on this is 9 dB is coming out of the clean boost patch in this preset. So I'm just emulating the gain structure that would have existed using the treble booster into the AC30. So I have the amp here for my basic crunch on a gain of 4.3. And this is a problem with modelers. Every amp model has gain, but not every real amplifier has gain. Like, I'm a big fan of this Plexi, just masters, no, you know, no gain, no preamp and master volume, just turn it up. You have this idealized situation, like I can gain the amp up if I wanted to, and I'm going to use that actually, but not right here on the basic one. Couple of things. The Amplifier 12, just like all modelers, it has characteristic frequencies kind of across all the models, and you just have to use a parametric to get in there and pull out some version of harshness. You know, there's a harshness in the fractal units that you need to address. There's kind of a weird preponderance of upper mids in the Boss units you need to address. Like, they've all got it, and you just have to like listen for it and tweak it out. So I use that parametric. Right here I'm ducking about 4.5K. And then, so I've got my treble booster, I've got my amp set at a relatively mild setting, and then I did a pre-filter just to take a low shelf, just to bring down some lows, and that's something that I just had to do kind of to get myself around some low frequencies coming out of the guitar. The gate, I'll say the gate in the Amplifier 12 works great. I think it works better than the one in the Axe. I don't know if the new Axe FX 3 improved the gate, but that has been a thorn in my side ever since I've had to use that unit. And a little bit, and then I'll get into where the echo and the reverb come into here, and the compressor. But the cab is a Celestion Blue 212, and I used the 57 Dark. I know that current tastes have geared towards combining mics. People like to combine a ribbon with it, so on and so forth. I really think that people don't know how to use a 57 right, but fair enough. In this case, I've just pulled up the 57. It's the one I like the best. They had like bright, dark, everything. Celestion did a great job with these IRs. So 57 Dark. And one really important thing about the Amplifier 12 is this roll-off over here. The roll-off is kind of what frequency you start getting a low-pass filtering effect from the cabinet. And I found that tweaking this level, bottom, air, and roll-off and the peak Q on the cabinets, regardless of how good the IR is a really important step to getting the sound where you want it. And this is the best place to go to tweak the sound when you put it up on a different system and suddenly it doesn't sound right. So if you I'm monitoring here in my control room, I think it sounds great. When it comes up on the wedge or it comes up in the house, if I need to deal with something in order to fix it, I'll go here first and bring some bottom up or bring some bottom out. It's kind of the last stage where you can EQ things in the Amplifier 12, and it's really useful. But enough of my talking, let's hear what it sounds like. couple things I've done here to get myself really close to the Brian May sound. First of all, I went online and I watched a bunch of YouTubes. Always a good tip. And what I discovered, because there's all these Queen isolated guitar tracks. So you can get isolated guitar, Brian May playing Tie Your Mother Down, isolated guitar, Brian May playing Hammer to Fall. This is just the amp into the cabinet. First thing to do, add the treble booster. That's the crux of the sound, right? That's it. Listen to the tapes of Brian, studio recording. Just about everything is kind of doubled in the rhythm guitar. I did that with the delay. So that's stereo, and I've got just 26 milliseconds on the left and 34 milliseconds on the right. And then I'll turn that off so we can hear what I'm doing with the reverb. The reverb, just short, just kind of a room sound that I noticed on almost all of the isolated guitar recordings. So the combination of the echo and the reverb starts getting you that layered sound that that Brian had in the studio. The other thing I noticed in the studio, and this is really prevalent on some of the tracks and not all of them, but that they're slamming him with a compressor. So what I found here in the Amplifier 12 is that the studio compressor mode, which is post effects return, it's in this post section. You have an option to put it in the early part of the chain by putting it in the late part of the chain. The studio version here is awesome sounding, and I put it on the attack is such that you hear it grab it. So while I liked what the compressor was doing, I wanted to treat the low end slightly, and then let's see what this post EQ is doing, where I'm talking about pulling out some of that characteristic frequency of the Amplifier 12. And with it, all right, so that's my basic crunch patch. Now I'm going to move over to the boost patch, and we're looking at the amp knobs across here as we move to the boost. And in the boost, a lot more gain on the amp. So here's the boosted patch. Difference is subtle. but let's just A/B it real quick here. So it's just a nice thing to have. I like having a boosted, slightly gainier patch. As things get more aggressive in a live setting, very often you take that crunch patch and you get nervous that it's not ballsy enough and you move over to the boost patch. Then it's the MD's job to tell me, hey man, that higher gaining sound is really not working in context. Please just use the crunch patch, and then I go back to the crunch patch. Now, what to do about the clean sound for Brian is that he mostly just uses his volume knob. Now, I mean, if he's got house and monitor engineers that are able to ride him, or some level of compression, you know, built into how an AC30 works, that's allowing him to do that and not lose level where he can't afford to lose level. You know, I don't have any of those luxuries. So while I do think that using the volume knob is going to be important to getting myself to that spot, because I'm not going to turn the treble booster off. I can't wholly rely on, you know, just the volume knob. The way I found out that the compressor, the studio compressor, was working so well on this is that I created a clean patch, and I wanted to fix this level problem that, like, as I roll down, I was losing too much level. Now, if, let's say we're going to play under pressure. Right? Still a little too much gain, but if I roll down, I still haven't really lost any level, because that compressor kicks in. It's really functioning as a limiter and gets me back up to square. So I can bring myself up a little more. Yeah. And part of what happens there is that, you know, because it's cut on a 12 string, so you have to figure out how to play the part so that you get what you want during the intro. So that's where I use this higher voicing. And then when the voice comes in, super useful across the gig. So the opportunities for it are Don't Stop Me Now, you know. And Save Me, which is a lot. Marc kills that song. It's a lot of fun. Right? And then I kind of took a massively different approach for the lead, where I'm losing the doubling effect, but I'm going for a traditional delay. So I've got like... I was comfortable with this lead patch because it was easier for me to play on than kind of like looking at something very era specific to what Brian did. But I did have to set myself up for it. Now, this comes in the limitation of the guitar. In order to switch to, Brian used this sound. He basically uses this sound where he's got these two pickups on right here, and they're in phase. And then the other sound is these two pickups on with them out of phase. And you accomplish that by putting this one out of phase, and you leave this one alone. So, but then what you have to do is you have to turn the bridge off and turn the neck on. So switching from the first setting to the second setting is like two switches, and you're trying to do it with this sixpence in your hand, and I found that completely like nerve-wracking, for lack of a better word. So what to do? Well, what I always used to do to get a Brian May sound before I had this guitar is I used to just bring a wah-wah pedal or a one of those frozen wah-wah pedals, so you can pick this frequency and just set it there and you're done. So what I did was I essentially programmed that into the amplifier. So on this, which is called the Lead Plus, you can see I have the wah-wah in here, and I don't have a wah-wah pedal hooked up to it. So what I'm doing, well, first I'll go back to the lead patch and show you what the out of phase setting sounds like. So here's these two pickups with this one out of phase. I'll turn the delay off. And so you can hear right away that the guitar is insanely noisy in this setting. And Brian, of course, had the wiring customized so that they hum cancel when they're set out of phase, because this is one of his two main settings. So I tried using that on the gig, and it was a fail. So what I decided to do then is to just leave myself on this setting for the whole gig. Done. I don't have to worry about it. I'll use the volume knob a little bit for the clean patch. Brian never uses his tone knob, but I might use it a couple times. I'll show you where. So then I just created this patch. So I have this wah-wah pedal set to a certain point in the sweep, and it sounds like this. And it's dead quiet. Here's without. And here's with. So you imagine all those parts. And there I used the tone knob, which apparently, according to my research, Brian never uses the tone knob. I'm not sure. So. Not messing with the pickup selector. It's too noisy. We'll just put it on the pedal board and we're fine. We're all set. So the Brighton Rock solo sound. And this is, one might think it's a ping pong delay, but apparently the way they program it is really just dry, 800 millisecond 1600 millisecond, and just basically one repeat off of each. So you've got that. And here I've added a phase shifter, and a whole bunch of the classic stuff is done with a phase shifter. And right here I might talk just about what I'm doing on the pedal itself, because in the Amplifier 12 you have certain options, and what I'm doing is the bottom row is a selection of 5 patches. And if I start over here, I'm on 111, and you've got the top row are then on-off switches for various stomp boxes. So I've got this one is the compressor on-off. This next one is the boost on-off. Then I think I have the chorus on-off. Yep. And then the last one is the delay on off. Yeah, the echo on off. So, but then if you hit the bottom row button a second time, it takes you to the other 5 patches in this bank. So I'm on 111 and I hit this and it takes me to 116. And now I'm riding across that half of the bank. Unless I just hit it again, it takes me back. I have access to the chorus on a momentary switch, on a direct access switch, but I do not have access to the phasers. So what I did was I put the phaser patches on the other half of it. So like with the lead sound, here's my main lead sound. Like here's the me lead sound, right? 114. So this might be for I Want It All. And then, but then if I wanted to do something like Killer Queen and step on it again, I just called it plus, I don't know why. And that gives me that bone dry Bohemian Rhapsody sound. But I can still access a crunch sound with a phaser on it directly from there. Those are my Brian May patches on the Amplifier 12. I may have made some choices that you wouldn't, or that wouldn't work for you, but I will say that I think no matter what direction you, me, anybody wanted to go with it, you could get yourself definitely in the ballpark to professionally deliver a gig using this unit. Fits into half of my carry-on suitcase. Very flexible unit, works great, and combined with these Celestion IRs, particularly that 57 dark on the blue 212 open back, I believe is what I used. It's been working great. Thanks so much for checking this out. Hit subscribe. Come back and see me here on the YouTube channel. Thanks very much. I'm Angus Clark.